Press conference today is to launch the Vote Us Out of Iraq campaign. Most of us know that it's long past due the time that we should be leaving Iraq. We have had over 3,000 Americans killed, 25,000 injured. We're spending upwards of $400 billion that we know of, and there seems to be no end in sight. We chose this location in Berkeley advisedly because it wasn't too long ago that these streets were filled with tear gas and protesters as the collision between the establishment and those who wanted the war in Vietnam to stop gathered here in Berkeley and gave birth to the peace movement. And 30, 40 years later, we find ourselves in a very reminiscent situation. The difference is, in those days, the streets were the only alternative to protesting a policy that was clear to many as a failed policy. Now we don't have to do that. Guys like Don Perata grew up, they ended up in elected office, and believe that the best way to express the importance and power of a democracy is to use the vote. And that's what we intend to do. George Bush does not seem in any manner, shape, or form to understand it. He clearly doesn't understand history. We've got a failed policy that once before failed us and is failing us again. He does not recognize that. The elections in November, where there was an upheaval, and after 12 years of Republican rule in the Congress, it turned around and Democrats were elected to the majority. That wasn't enough for the president. The Iraq Study Group, which probably was the quintessential opportunity for the president to stand down to say that this group of experts have said the following things and I will follow their lead. But he didn't. He tossed that aside. That wasn't enough. Now Congress is acting, suggesting that legislation would require the withdrawal of the troops or the war would not be funded any longer. The president has said he will veto it. That doesn't matter. So the question is, what would? Well, we have an opportunity because California now has the earliest significant presidential primary in the country on February 5th. We put that on for February 5th because we wanted California as the largest state of the union, the place where everybody comes either for votes or for money to campaign. We wanted our voters to have an opportunity to be heard and to set the pace, to set the tone for the next presidential election. We believe that we have done what we can in Iraq. We have established a democratic rule, and it's time for the Iraqi people to decide whether or not that's what they want. You can't have a democracy that's going to be enforced. You have to have a democracy that is organic. It is the will of the people. So we're asking everyone to do in February is to vote on an initiative that will be moved through the legislature that will simply have the proposition, is it time to leave? Is it time to get out, to vote us out? If all the other things that President Bush has failed to do, that he could have done to extricate us from this quagmire, if nothing else works, then how about the biggest state in the union rising up to give him a clear statement of support or opposition? Now, some people have said, well, it doesn't make any difference. We all know what the outcome was going to be. That's why they have elections. That's why they play games. That's why we have races. Because we may know or think we know, but there is nothing as sure as the finished product. So let the voters of this state come out and say, Mr. President, get us out. We are voting ourselves out of Iraq. We want every single candidate coming to California to square off on this issue. Whether it's Giuliani from the Republican side, Hillary Clinton from the Democratic side, or anyone else, let them tell us where they stand on this issue. It is an unambiguous, clear statement of policy that Californians are going to lay down and vote for. Now, there is a terrible thing underfoot in this country, and those of us who have gray hair or no hair are recognizing. We saw what happened when the deceit of Vietnam took fully hold in this country, the mistrust of government, the effect on the economy when you're trying to wage a war with guns and an economy with butter. It took a generation for us to recover from what the Vietnam experience had on this country, on a whole generation of people. And it seems to me that we are perilously close right now to once again finding ourselves in a position where the people of this country will no longer have confidence in its government. When the government says this is what's happening, we will not believe that is what's happening. Now, what a terrible price for us to pay to repeat history so clearly the way we lived it once. The difference is we do not have to be on the streets of Berkeley or the streets of Oakland. We can now use the ballot box as it was intended, as a voice for democracy, a voice for the people. So that's what we're going to do. This legislation has gone across the desk in Sacramento, which is an artful way of saying it is now in play. It will get out of the Senate, it will go to the Assembly. I am confident that it will pass the Assembly. The question is, will the governor sign it? That's up to the governor. It would seem to me that anybody that looked at Bush's poll numbers or the general sense in this country today about this war, it would not be a complicated or long decision for this governor to make. He has in fact shown an inclination to support many of the things that people in this state say are priorities: health care, clean environment. So we're going to urge the governor to support us and put this on the ballot. Finally, there are a few other states that are going up early. New Jersey, New York, two of the largest states in the country. I have written a letter to the president, my counterpart in the Senate of New York, and I've asked him to consider doing the same thing. We will ask other states who may, in fact, go on February 5th to do the same thing, to effectuate a kind of national referendum. If New York and New Jersey and other states on the right coast join with the left coast in saying enough is enough, vote us out, get us out, the time is now, there would be no mystery left to what the President of the United States is doing. He is simply and clearly denying the will of the people of this country. But there would be no excuse for the next President of the United States not to understand the priority that we place on getting out of Iraq, rebuilding our reputation in the world, and taking care of the problems at home that are the underpinning and the calling card of a true democracy. When I was teaching years ago, the only thing I could exhort my students to do was to register to vote when the time came and vote for people that represented the concerns and interests that they had. Times have changed. Now we all can participate in this. We can provide the leadership as a community of people in this state.